Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 516 in the chapter The Knowledge and the Ignorance. We read the first paragraph last week, and today Ranga will give us the summary.
Last time what we read, I am reading out the summary, and then we'll go on to the next para. So Srenda is exploring consciousness. He wants to know a little bit of a background. The whole problem is arising because when you raise your consciousness to the self, you start seeing the world as illusion, mostly. It's possible that you have the cosmic consciousness and you don't see the world as illusion. It's possible. But mostly it is like that. When your mind goes up, it gets a shock. You see that what you thought was real is not real. So what is the problem? From where is it coming? How is it that something so fundamentally different is coming? Who is responsible for this? So he starts exploring and he comes to the conclusion that is the consciousness between the percept and the perceiver. So there he is examining the consciousness that connects the two. Knowledge. So this is the problem he is. So now he says that the connection between the perception is a function of consciousness. So let's start looking at consciousness. So this is the background. So when we go below and above the surface consciousness, things look quite different when we relate them to the omnipresent reality. When we look at existence, our personal state as well as the cosmic, we find that unity, oneness dominate prominently, even when multiplicity is at its utmost, as in matter. Unity is everywhere. Dualism, even when experienced, is not an inevitable binding factor. But the one and the many, light and darkness, knowledge and ignorance, personal and impersonal, saguna and nirguna, are only aspects, poles of the same reality. All multiplicity goes back to oneness, just as unity seemingly divides itself into infinite many. Okay? He is saying that they are not opposites. Light and darkness, consciousness and unconsciousness are not opposites. They are complementary aspects of the same thing, this side and that side. Like a coin, obverse and reverse.
And he uses the word seemingly.
Yeah.
Seemingly.
Yeah. Apparently, seemingly. It seems to be. So, we have seen that even pain and suffering can be turned into their opposites by enlarging our receptive capacity of consciousness. So I just gave an example last time. When a wind is coming and it is pleasant, your capacity to withstand the pressure of that wind is enough, so you find it pleasant. But the moment your capacity is less than the incoming wind, you find it unpleasant. So what's the solution? Enlarge your consciousness. And what do you mean by enlarging your consciousness? Don't remain stuck in your body-mind life. Go out of your body-mind life. Your consciousness goes to the higher mind level and it can even have a cosmic consciousness. So your consciousness becomes much larger, everything becomes pleasant. So when you are there, you find nothing unpleasant. Everything is fine. There are only two complementary aspects of the same thing: pain, pleasure, light, darkness, all the dualities. The contraries, the lower poles, are caused by our limited consciousness. Pain is the purposeful holding back. Now, pain is the purposeful holding back of Ananda for a particular action of its own in the manifestation. So, this also we discussed last time, the manifestation is limitation. It is limited, everything is limited. So if the infinite power has to deal with limited, it has to proportionately reduce its power to what is and make it compatible with the work to be done. If it is too much, you will spoil everything. If it is too little, you won't succeed. We gave a very simple example of the nail in the wall. Use too much force, the wall breaks. Use too little force, you can't get your work done. The nail won't go in. Exactly the same way, the infinite consciousness, when it has to deal with the manifestation, reduces itself.
But the manifestation is the intent of the divine.
Yes, and there is an evolution. He is not talking of the evolution
Exactly.
now, but there is an evolution, and the consciousness which is limited is slowly increasing. Consciousness is increasing, power is increasing, and Ananda also will increase as you keep going higher and higher and higher. But there is one thing, that does not mean that the contraries will disappear here. What is happening is that the divine is manifesting himself and showing that this is a possibility. For instance, when animals come up, all matter has not become animal. Some matter remains matter and some have turned into life. Similarly, mind. So in other words, there are more atoms than there are animals. There are more animals than human beings. There are more human beings than yogis. So it's a pyramidal structure. What is being shown is, the divine is showing that this is possible. Here you are, look at that. So it's a sampling that happens. So it's not that entire when we say divinization of matter, it doesn't mean to say that every stone will become divine. Stones will remain stones, animals will remain animals, men will remain men, and Superman also will be there. It's a pyramidal structure. But this is possible even on earth. That is what is going to be proved. Okay? So contraries, the lower poles, are caused by our limited consciousness. Pain is the purposeful holding back of Ananda for a particular action of its own in the manifestation. Similarly, ignorance is the intentional withholding of knowledge to achieve a desired result in the universe. But it should be noted that ignorance does not exist by itself. It is dependent and sourced from the knowledge. Without knowledge, there can be no ignorance. Without knowledge, there can be no ignorance. Shadows cannot exist without light.
Who is intentionally holding back?
The ultimate supreme authority, which is Satchidananda. There are two ways of looking at it. If you think of it as something impersonal, which many do, Buddhists, Mayavadins, okay, they feel that there is no God, there is only perfection in certain sense, infinite, Sat Chit Ananda. But if you want to see, no, I don't think that it's like that. There must be someone who is a lord, a king, someone who is a supreme authority. Then you have the personal aspect of the divine. So at the highest level, you can experience both. You can experience the personal as well as the impersonal aspects of God. So he is the one who is doing all this. Okay? So falsehood, evil, pain cannot exist without truth, good, Ananda. Falsehood, evil and pain are dependent secondary realities. They are real when you are here. When you go up, they are not so real. Okay? Now we go to the next para.
Yes.
This is what he has said in the previous para. To know, and note the word to know, not know these things, to know the reality. We have always to dissolve the rigid constructions of the ignorant and self-willed intellect and look freely and flexibly at the facts of existence. At the facts of existence. Don't make any judgment, just look and find out what the fact is. Its fundamental fact is consciousness, which is power. Power and consciousness always go together. And we actually see that this power has three ways of operating. First, we find that there is a consciousness behind all, embracing all, within all, which is eternally, universally, absolutely aware of itself, whether in unity or multiplicity, or in both simultaneously, or beyond both in sheer absolute, in its sheer absolute. So what is he saying? Look carefully and know what the facts of the universe are. Then you will come to know what is consciousness. Don't make your own judgments. Okay. So he's saying, we see that the fundamental fact is consciousness, which is power. Chit, Shakti, always go together. Okay. You can use different terms. Chit, Shakti, consciousness and power, or Purusha, Prakriti, the one and the many, the static and the dynamic. You can use any word you want. Basically, it means the same thing. There is the up is the static, lower is the dynamic movement. The one and the many. Purusha consciousness, Purusha Prakriti. Okay, so first we find that there is consciousness behind all, embracing all, within all, which is eternally, universally, absolutely aware of itself, whether in unity or multiplicity, or in both simultaneously, or beyond both in its sheer absolute. So, first, behind all, embracing all, within all. So, behind all and within all is the individual, within all. The divine consciousness is there within everything, even the stone. But embracing all, it includes everything. The consciousness includes everything. Then, and beyond both, in its sheer absolute. Sheer absolute is a transcendent. So what he is saying is that there is a transcendent consciousness beyond the universe. The universe is not there. When you are in the transcendent consciousness, the world doesn't exist for you. You are aware only of the divine looking within. Okay? Then when you come down, the divine starts looking outwardly and creating the universe. But when it is transcendent, he is not creating the universe, he is outside the universe. No intention of creating the universe. Different layers of the consciousness. Universally, absolutely aware, and sheer absolute is beyond both sheer absolute transcendent. This is the plenitude of the supreme divine knowledge, self-knowledge, because he is conscious of himself. It is also the plenitude of the divine all knowledge. So, what is the all knowledge and self-knowledge? Self-knowledge, you know yourself. But the all knowledge is you know whatever is you are producing outside in the universe. So, one is the universe and one is the individual. Okay. Next, at the other pole of things, we see this consciousness dwelling upon apparent oppositions in itself. And the most extreme antinomy of all reaches its acme in what seems to us to be a complete nescience of itself, an effective, dynamic, creative inconscience. Though we know that this is merely a surface appearance and that the divine knowledge works with a sovereign security and sureness within the operations of the inconscient. So, one he is talking of consciousness everywhere and highest level. Now he is talking of the opposite. We are talking of the inconscience. But this inconscient is, note carefully, effective, dynamic, creative inconscience. Isn't matter creating? Matter is creating life. From the lower end, physics is creating life. So, it has got all this consciousness inherently embedded in inconscience and it is slowly flowering out. It's coming out, it is emerging. But this emergence The right conditions have to be there, then it emerges. The soil can produce a plant, but a stone can't. So when the conditions are right, it produces. Matter produces life. Life produces also mind. Now there is one thing interesting. Scientists are saying that we have the power to create life in the lab, in the laboratory.
Yes.
But they cannot do that. What they are doing is, they are only creating the right conditions for life to emerge. You don't have the power to create life. You are only creating in the lab conditions conducive to the growth of life. Nowadays they are making artificial meat. You have heard of that? So they are growing meat in the lab. So you are only creating the conditions where this is possible. Man has no power to create life. But he can create the conditions where life comes up.
And he can create the conditions also of darkness, negativity.
Yeah, and that's
we see that
what
happening.
we see today in the world is all darkness.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So the character of inconscience is nescience of itself. It does not know itself. Effective, dynamic, creative. Although it looks like dead stuff, but it is capable of that. Though we know that this is merely a surface appearance and that the divine knowledge works with a sovereign security and sureness within the operations of the inconscient. So, even in matter, the divine consciousness is working. Because the divine consciousness is working, it evolves. Life comes out because of that. And in this divine consciousness, you don't see it very clearly in matter, but when life comes up, you see that there is a consciousness which is operating. But a very low level of consciousness. It is feeling its way in the plants. Okay? It is looking for light, it is looking for water, and then it grows. Animals also do things. Instinct in animals, they don't know why they are doing it, but they do it. Migration of birds, okay? The building of nests before the eggs come. How do they know that the eggs are going to come? So it's a low level of consciousness which guides them. Okay? Animals, Srimdo says, when they act with instinct, pure instinct, they never make a mistake. But when the mind, even the little bit of mind that they have comes in, it spoils the thing. They can make a mistake.
And Mother says people spoil animals also, because the animal becomes attached to the person.
Yeah.
And she even gives an example where you could give poisonous weeds to a cow and he will eat it. But if he's alone, away from people, he will never touch it.
Yeah. So, this is the next Adadapul that we read. Okay, so that the divine knowledge works with a sovereign security and sureness within the operations of the inconscient. Between these two oppositions, the higher and the lower, and a mediary term, we see consciousness working with a partial, limited self-awareness, which is equally superficial, for behind it and acting through it is the divine all-knowledge. So what he is saying is that you have a supreme consciousness at the highest level, transcendent, absolute, and you have an inconscience at the lowest level. In between, there are mediary levels of consciousness. In the plant, in the animal it is slightly more, in the human being it is even more, but still it is a mixture of knowledge and ignorance. It's a mixture of knowledge and ignorance. At the highest level it becomes knowledge. Here, in its intermediate status, it seems to be a standing compromise between two opposites, between the supreme consciousness and the nescience, but may prove rather in a larger view of our data to be an incomplete emergence of the knowledge to the surface. So it's not something static, it will slowly change towards knowledge. This compromise or imperfect emergence we call ignorance, the ignorance. From our own point of view, because ignorance is our own characteristic way of the soul's self-withholding of complete self-knowledge. We come back to the old idea. The origin of these three poises of the power of consciousness and their exact relation is what we have, if possible, to discover. So, he is saying that it looks like that. There is transcendent, there is a cosmic, and there is an individual, and there is a highest consciousness, a middle term consciousness, and no consciousness at all. These are the three levels, and we have to examine exactly what each one is. Okay? If we discovered that ignorance and knowledge were two independent powers of consciousness, it might then be that we would have to pursue their difference right up to the highest point. Sorry, just 1 second.
Up to the highest point, yeah.
Yeah. If we discovered that ignorance and knowledge were two independent powers of consciousness, he has been telling us all through that they are connected. They are only two poles of the same thing. Now he is saying, let us suppose that they are two independent. Ignorance has nothing to do with knowledge, and knowledge has nothing to do with ignorance. This is the position of the Buddhists. It's also the position of the Mayavadin. The two are different. They are absolutely different. They have nothing to do with each other. So you want the divine, go there. Reject this. Okay? So that's what he is now taking up. It might then be that we would have to pursue their difference up to the highest point of consciousness, where they would cease only in an absolute from which both of them had issued together. Okay, so there is a footnote. I am reading the footnote. Yeah, so the footnote is, it says, in the Upanishads, Vidya and Avidya are spoken of as eternal in the Supreme Brahman. But this can be accepted in the sense of the consciousness of the multiplicity and the consciousness of the oneness, which by coexistence in the supreme self-awareness became the basis of the manifestation. There would be two sides of an eternal self-knowledge. So, I'll go into this a little more. Okay, so, in other words, when we go to the highest level, there is a oneness. But is there also a many? No, it doesn't seem to be like that. Here it is many, but you don't see the oneness. There you see the oneness, but you don't see the many. But is it there? It is there in potential. The supermind has the power to produce its opposite. So the knowledge is 100%, and the ignorance is a potential there. When knowledge reduces itself, it produces ignorance. That's what he's saying. Okay? I read that again. If we discovered that ignorance and knowledge were two independent powers of consciousness, it might then be that we would have to pursue their difference up to the highest point of consciousness, where they would cease only in an absolute from which both of them had issued together. So when you go to the absolute, then potentially both are there. It might then be concluded that the only real knowledge is the truth of the superconscient absolute, and the truth of consciousness, truth of cosmos, truth of ourselves in cosmos is at best a partial figure, burdened always with a concomitant presence, an encircling penumbra, a pursuing shadow of ignorance. So, he is saying that the absolute is self-existent, and by its operations it produces the ignorance. But the ignorance is not something fundamentally self-existent. It is not. Okay? We discussed that last time also. If the world were to disappear, Satchidananda will not disappear. Brahman will not disappear. But if Brahman disappears, the world also has to disappear. So it's a secondary reality. It's a result of knowledge. It's not independent. That's what he's saying. So, an encircling penumbra, a pursuing shadow of ignorance. It might even be that an absolute knowledge, establishing truth, harmony, order, and an absolute inconscience, basing a play of fantasy, disharmony and disorder, supporting inexorably its extreme of falsehood, wrong and suffering, a Manichaean double principle of conflicting and intermingling light and darkness, good and evil, stand at the root of cosmic existence. So, he has mentioned Manichaean, and this is the theory that God and the world have nothing to do with each other. This is a Christian theory also, the Christhood and the Antichrist or whatever. Okay? The Mayavadin also says the same thing, that the divine is all, but this is the opposite, and it is independent, it is there. The evil is there. Okay, so a Manichaean double principle of conflicting and intermingling light and darkness, good and evil, stand at the root of cosmic existence. The idea of certain thinkers that there is an absolute good but also an absolute evil, both of them, an approach to the absolute, might assume consistence. So, if you think like that, then it is possible. And there are people who think like that. That's exactly what he's pointing out. It's a possibility. Of course, he doesn't agree with that.
No.
He says that ignorance is not something independent and self-existent. Evil doesn't exist. Evil is a product of evolution. Okay. Later chapters will make that clear. The idea of certain thinkers that there is an absolute good but also an absolute evil, both of them an approach to the absolute, might assume consistence. But if we find that knowledge and ignorance are light and shadow of the same consciousness, that the beginning of ignorance is a limitation of knowledge, that it is the limitation that opens the door to a subordinate possibility of partial illusion and error, that this possibility takes full body after a purposeful plunge of knowledge into material inconscience, but that knowledge too emerges along with an emerging consciousness out of the inconscience. Then we can be sure that this fullness of ignorance is by its own evolution changing back into a limited knowledge, and can feel the assurance that the limitation of itself will be removed and the full truth of things become apparent, the cosmic truth free itself from the cosmic ignorance. So, he is bringing in the idea of, here when you are in the ignorance and evil, it seems to be absolute, and some say that it is absolute. But Srila is saying that if you think that they are connected, you will see that ignorance can slowly change itself into knowledge. And that's a spiritual experience. When you, with yoga, you try and go to a higher level of consciousness, you see that your ignorance was at a lower level and now it has become light and knowledge. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, in fact, what is happening is that the ignorance is seeking and preparing to transform itself by progressive illumination of its darkness into the knowledge that is already concealed within it. The cosmic truth manifested in its real essence and figure would by that transformation reveal itself as essence and figure of the supreme omnipresent reality. In other words, he is saying what we call ignorance is there inherent in knowledge, and what is ignorance, knowledge is there lurking inside and trying to come out.
Emerge, yes.
Yeah, it will emerge from there. Okay? It is from this interpretation of existence that we have started. He goes back to his previous, the 2 chapters, the refusal of the ascetic and the materialist denial. They are not opposites, but they are complementary aspects of the same thing. By the way, on the journey he is exploring, he says that others may think like that. It's possible to think like that. But our theory is different. That's what he's saying. Okay? It is from this interpretation of existence. What is the interpretation? The two are connected. They are not independent realities, they are connected. Okay? But to verify it, we must observe the structure of our surface consciousness and its relation to what is within it and above it and below it. Again he comes back to the same thing. Examine consciousness fully. And what does it mean? What is below our consciousness? What is inside our consciousness? What is above our consciousness? So explore the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual and the inconscient also. Okay? So now he will start looking at the surface consciousness, the next chapter. So let's say what is within it, above it and below it. For so best we can distinguish the nature and scope of the ignorance. In that process there will appear the nature and scope also of that of which the ignorance is a limitation and deformation, the knowledge. In its totality, the spiritual beings abiding self-knowledge and world knowledge. When ignorance slowly, from ignorance emerges this, you get self-knowledge and world knowledge. Self-knowledge is knowledge of yourself and world knowledge is knowledge of the world, not scientific knowledge, but the real spiritual knowledge behind all the forms in the world. So he says now we are going to examine consciousness and we are going to examine surface consciousness first. Therefore we come to the next chapter, memory, self-consciousness and the ignorance. So this is the beginning of the exploration of surface consciousness. Chapter 8, memory, self-consciousness and the ignorance. Memory we all understand, but note the word self-consciousness. Satchidananda is conscious of itself. Some speak of the self-nature of things. Others say that it is time. Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Maitri Upanishad, next one. Two are the forms of Brahman, time and timeless. So, the spiritual consciousness is outside time and space, and the physical world is in time and space. So that's why there. Doesn't memory imply a flow of time? That's why he's talking of time. Because memory of something that is already gone, so that's a past. So there is also a memory of the future. And you could call it memory you can call it also for, what is it called? Foresight. So that's a memory of the future. So, these are the two quotations. Now we come to there are many quotations.
Yes.
I am reading all the quotations. Next is from the Rig Veda. Night was born, and from night the flowing ocean of being, and on the ocean time was born, to whom is subjected every seeing creature. So, night was born. In other words, before there was a sea of inconscience, and from there everything is slowly emerging. Memory is greater. Without memory, men could think and know nothing. As far as goes the movement of memory, there he ranges at will. Chandogya Upanishad. So, as far as goes the movement of memory, there he ranges at will. The scope of memory is, he arranges that way. Some of these quotations are very abstract.
Yes.
Like, who is the he?
Who is the he? Exactly.
So, all these things we have to see. It's only one sentence. Often you have to see the context, and then you. I read the last one, Prashna Upanishad. This is he who is that which sees, touches, hears, smells, tastes, thinks, understands, acts in us, a conscious being, a self of knowledge. So, he is the one who sees, touches, he is using all his senses. So, is it the ego or is it the real being inside you? So, this is what he is going to discuss in the chapter. In any survey of the dual character of our consciousness, we have first to look at ignorance. For ignorance trying to turn into knowledge is our normal status. This is man's condition. He is trying to know himself, trying to know the universe. That's the whole purpose of science. Science is trying to know the universe. Okay? And the yogi is trying to know himself. For ignorance trying to turn into knowledge is our normal status. To begin with, it is necessary to consider some of the essential movements of this partial awareness of self and things, which works in us as a mediator between the complete self-knowledge and all knowledge and a complete inconscience. And from that starting point, find its relation to the greater consciousness below our surface. There is a line of thought in which great stress is laid upon the action of memory. Okay? In fact, people say that memory makes a man. Just imagine if you don't have any memory, what will be your condition? Yesterday, day before yesterday, is all gone. You are starting from a clean slate again. And today what you are experiencing again goes away. So what are you?
Maybe you don't know anything of
That's
who
the
you
reason
are.
why they say memory is the man.
Exactly.
If memory is not there, so. But that's a partial view, he will explain. Okay, so. There is a line of thought in which great stress is laid upon the action of memory. It has even been said that memory is the man. There you are. Okay? It is memory that constitutes our personality and holds cemented the foundation of our psychological being. For it links together our experiences and relates them to one and the same individual entity. Okay? But if the memory is not there, this individual entity is not there. Who is experiencing? You have forgotten everything. Okay, so this is an idea which takes its stand on our existence in the succession of time and accepts process as a key to essential truth, even when it does not regard the whole of existence as process or as cause and effect in the development of some kind of self-regulating energy as karma. So, even if you don't think of that, he's saying, okay, there is a succession of time and there is a process which comes. Process of cause and effect. But process is merely a utility. It's a habitual adoption of certain effective relations which might, in the infinite possibility of things, have been arranged otherwise for the production of effects which might equally have been quite different. Now we'll have to discuss this. The real truth of things lies not in their process but behind it, in whatever determines, affects or governs the process. Not in effectuation so much as in the will or power that affects, and not so much in will or power as in the consciousness of which will is the dynamic form and in the being of which power is the dynamic value. Quite complicated. We'll have to discuss this. But memory is only a process of consciousness, a utility, It cannot be the substance of being or the whole of our personality. It is simply one of the workings of consciousness, as radiation is one of the workings of light. It is self that is the man. It is self that is the man, not the memory. Or, if we regard only our normal surface existence, mind is the man, for man is a mental being. Memory is only one of the many powers and processes of the mind, which is at present the chief action of consciousness force in our dealings with self, world and nature. So he is examining first memory. So he is saying that you may think that memory is the main thing, but it is not. It is a process. It is the self that is the real thing. That is static.
So we'll pick this up next week.
Yeah.
Next week we will be on page 520 in the chapter Memory, Self-Consciousness, and the Ignorance. Thank you, Ranga. Namaste, all.